What's the weirdest thing someone casually told you, as if it were totally normal? Story 1. I was chatting to a woman in the grocery checkout line, and she commented that she had lost a lot of weight. It was on topic. Since I need to lose weight, I asked her how she did it. She said her husband, now ex, has poisoned her with antifreeze over a period of time. She barely survived. I wasn't sure what to say, so I said that I didn't think I'd try that method of weight loss. She laughed. Story 2. A homophobic guy. I know being gay is a choice. I said something like, okay, choose to be gay for a day, an hour, a single minute if you can, guy. That's easy. I'm attracted to men all the time. I just choose to only like girls because I'm not gay. Story 3. Oh, my parents fight every day, and my father left in a rage this morning, saying he was going to jump in front of a train. I hope he comes back before I get home. He did before. Story 4. I've had 12 DUIs, 8 concussions, and have died twice. Can't wait till I can drive again. This time it'll take life more seriously. Once I get this ankle bracelet off and my license back. What was the most alarming part of the sentence? Story 5. A friend of mine was explaining to me why he had to repeat kindergarten. When I was 5, I was at family barbecue and I couldn't find my dad. I looked all over and finally I found him in the garage. He was tied to a chair and 2 of his cousins were beating me out of him. A couple of days later, my dad was driving me to school and he saw one of the cousins walking down the street. He pulled over, jumped out of the car, and shot his cousin in the head. I missed too many days of kindergarten because of the murder trial, so I had to repeat it. Story 6. A guy once told me how he loved the feeling of wearing casts, so had put casts on himself for days or weeks on end, even if it meant he couldn't drive and would be stuck at home the entire time. Had used vacation time just to wear full-leg arm casts. Story 7. Husband 30 and I were pushing our shopping cart out of the grocery store when a random man who honestly looked like Dumbledore looked at my husband and said, "Take my hat. We're going to need it. You'll be bald very soon." Obviously, my husband didn't take it. It was super odd of him to say because my husband had a full head of hair. 3 months later, my husband was diagnosed with a condition that made him lose all of his hair. Weird coincidence. Story 8. Was like 10 or 11 and riding public transit and had some dude in his 30s sits next to me putting me. So I'm in the window seat, and they're in the aisle seat. So I'm trapped and starts talking about how he just got out of prison for raping his brother and how you shouldn't do that just because someone makes you angry. Told in a way where they thought they were passing on really helpful life advice. Was so surreal, I didn't even realize how disturbing it actually was until the first retelling of the story. Story 9. I know a guy. We don't talk often, but due to business we cross paths on occasion. More or less every time we talk he asks if I'm ready for the total societal collapse coming next week, or Tuesday, or at the end of the month, and so on. I just tell him that it's not going to happen. He usually then asks about my crystal ball, so I remind him that I've been right every time. Story 10. I had a college professor on the first day of class say that she's obsessed with Q-tips and cleaning her ears, and that her family has to limit her to 3 a day dash. Story 11. A story from a friend in Colorado. Someone once asked, "Could you watch my wolves? I can pay you in weed." There's a lot to unpack in that question. Story 12. When I was in high school, I was sitting next to a friend on the school bus. Mid-conversation, he spit his gum into a wrapper and put a new piece of gum in his mouth. When I asked him why, he said that his tooth fell out in the gum, but he didn't want to interrupt the conversation, so he just nonchalantly switched out the pieces. Story 13. Okay, so years ago, I was going through training to work at the State Department. The background checks are pretty thorough. Lying or omitting something will get you into trouble when it comes to a secret clearance. We had some time to kill, so we're sharing with each other, including the instructor, about wild stuff they did when they were younger. The worst anyone said was that the paintball, the Home Depot, until this dude, as casual and jovial as a person can be, told us this funny, lighthearted story of a time someone owed his friend drug money, and his friend stopped at the house and handed him an AK-47, and they went into the house, and he held the guy's mom at gunpoint while his friend robbed the house of some valuables. Seeing the slow transition from smiling faces to confused faces to dumbfounded faces for everyone in the room is one of the funniest things I've witnessed in person. He was telling it as if it was a story of smashing mailboxes. By the end of it, the instructor, former FBI agent, had his shocked face in his hands like he was watching a horse a human. People gave him plenty of outs like, "Yeah, but this is just a joke though." Right, to which he would respond with some variation of, "No bro, it happened exactly like this." The instructor gave him the last out that didn't actually happen, right? And he was like, "Nope, it happened exactly like that." He was escorted out by 2 officers, and it's not hyperbole to say none of us ever heard from him again. He scrubbed his social media and everything. TLDR dude told a story about how he committed felonies and never got caught to an FBI agent. Edit some spelling. Story 14. These many years ago, I was walking on a long, narrow, and mostly empty path on campus. As I crossed paths with a literal stranger, I mumbled a courteous greeting as we do in the South. "Me, how's it going? Female student, I just recovered memories of being molested. Not that being molested is normal, and definitely not that recovered memories of childhood abuse is normal." But the way she told me was so casual it threw me for a loop. Story 15. My ex-girlfriend, who I genuinely believe is a clinical sociopath, told me once about breaking the nose of a neighborhood girl who was developmentally disabled when she was 10 because she was bored and the girl was annoying her. She told the story like she understood it was wrong, but I got the sense that she knew she was supposed to tell it that way, not that she agreed. Story 16. I was walking to work one day and a random older lady across the street waved me over. The gamer in me felt a side quest coming. No, she waved me over to tell me that her son had just died, but her words, he was ahead, so it's not a total loss, honestly. It made my day, but I still felt bad. Story 17. My coworker wasn't feeling well and proceeded to tell in detail about her vaginal discharge. She seemed slightly miffed when I politely told her I was sorry she wasn't well, but that level of person detail was not appropriate. Why would you want your coworker to have those images in their head? Why? Story 18. I went into a Sally Beauty Supply a few months ago looking for nail polish. This very normal-looking woman who looked like she was in her 50s, but actually in her 30s, casually asked how my day is going. I said, "It's great." She does the big sigh while blowing a raspberry, so my boyfriend and I are fighting. I just had my birthday last week, turned 32, and he was supposed to take me to get sushi, but he had to take his mom to do her laundry. But then after he went to buy drugs, I guess. So he ran from the cops and wrecked my car into a telephone pole. He's paralyzed and in the hospital. They said he won't walk again, and he's been calling and texting, crying, wanting me to take care of him. But I dumped him. I mean, it's over. You're paralyzed and you won't work. Plus, you totaled my car, and it was impounded, and I found out my insurance lapsed, and he stole my food stamps. I'm just at a loss. I've got 7 kids with 3 great guys, and I have to raise my kids. I can't raise these kids, and a crippled man, too. I'm like, look at me, young, attractive woman, and I've got a good job at Sally, making almost 10 an hour, and they're saying I could be management by the 4th of July. That's big for someone like me. So anyway, I'm just going through it and no one understands. You're really a nice person. You're so easy to talk to with such kind eyes. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about this. I just stood there dazed. Do you need help finding something? I grab a random bottle of nail polish. I didn't even want it, but just want it out of there so bad. I'm only buying nail polish online for a while. Story 19. I was leaving the grocery store when one of the employees came up to me and said, "You remind me so much of that guy in Colorado that killed his wife and kids." Well, that's pretty disturbing. Her, do you know who I'm talking about? Me, not right offhand. Her, you should Google it. You look a lot like him. I'm always following true crime shows, and I finally got summoned for jury duty. It's very exciting. Me, okay, yeah, that's great. Have a nice day. Hasty exit followed. Story 20. That they were doing building work at their home and dug up a human skeleton. They and their builder decided it was old and didn't need any investigation, so they tossed it in the dumpster. Story 21. I was at a fancy dinner in a country where meat is a central part of the diet. One man, however, was a vegetarian, as this was uncommon in the area. I asked what got him interested in vegetarianism. He explained that he was once forced to eat other human beings and has not been able to eat meat since. It was an unfortunately true story of how he had been stopped by terrorists in some African country when he was chaperoning a bus full of children on some trip. Granted, he knew it wasn't normal, but he dropped it so casually as if it were as banal as any other reason to become vegetarian. Story 22. When I worked retail, a girl I worked with, maybe early 20s at that point, was telling me about her good friend who had just gotten pregnant because she passed out at a party and woke up with a guy on top of her. Just as he was finishing, the girl asked where he came, and he just callously replied that he came inside her. The girl was now faced with dealing with pregnancy, basically completely on her own with no money. My friend coworker told me this story with a tone of, "Can you believe this?" But in a resigned way, at the level you might tell a story about someone not holding an elevator or not tipping on a large bill. When I asked if the girl had called the police, she looked at me like I had 2 heads. I said, "Because that's rape?" And she gasped and said, "Oh yeah." It was clearly the first time it had occurred to her that it was an actual crime that could be reported and not just something do sometimes that you just have to deal with. So I'm guessing her friend didn't think of it either. That was a depressing day. Story 23. Oh, he was born with Webb. He had surgery as a baby. You have to have noticed the scar, said about my boyfriend by his mother while he was at work. Story 24. Babysitting a 3 years old. During playtime, she quite matter-of-factly tells me that her stuffed dinosaur is very sick and has to live in the hospital because his parents are dead. Story 25. I drew smiley faces on the wooden spoons my mom used to hit us with. She got so angry that she broke every single one on me before she backhanded me in the fridge so hard I lost consciousness. My husband, relaying a hilarious childhood story, looked up to see the horrified looks on everyone's faces and was genuinely baffled about our attitudes. Story 26. My grandmother told me that one of my uncles should have been She also said that if birth control pills existed during the years that she was having babies, she would have taken them by the handfuls because every time she walked past the bedroom door, she ended up pregnant. She told me this after I got married. I worked with someone who had been in the news for driving a car in which 3 passengers died. She casually mentioned that the mother of one of the victims was very angry at her. And she said to me, she has other children. Story 27. You should get a thinner waist. And breast implants too. Your breasts are ugly. Also, I'd like to sleep with other girls while you watch. My then boyfriend of 2 years. Story 28. It's easier to bang chicks who used to be fat because they're hotter now, but still have low self-esteem. Oh yeah. And I lost 130 pounds, so that went over smoothly with me. Story 29. Once, an older woman came up to me on the street, took hold of my wrists, and simply said they ripped out my afterbirth, and then carried on walking. Story 30. I was discussing a Jeffrey Dahmer documentary with my brother, and my dad just nonchalantly commented on how he grew up with Dahmer and played with him as a kid. Turns out my dad's cousin was neighbors with Dahmer, and they used to play together when he went and stayed with his cousins. Another one regarding my dad was when I was watching some TV mystery show, and they were talking about near-death experiences, and the light at the end of the tunnel thing my dad just casually butted in that he had one of those. He got a severe fever as a kid and almost died and seen the light and everything. Story 31. Many years ago, I was a college student taking psychology classes. I participated in a group discussion thing at a mental hospital where they were attempting to prepare patients for interacting with the world when they got out. It was kind of unsettling because everyone wore normal clothes and you couldn't tell who were the patients and who were the counselors or visitors. One guy was very pleasant and authoritative, and I assumed he was one of the staff. He was sitting right next to me the day we were discussing dealing with our parents, and he said very calmly, "It was far more upsetting to me when I killed my mother than when I killed my father. I was so stunned I just froze." Story 32. While on a beach trip, I was trying to play with my brother in the waves. He walked up to me and casually told me that he had decided he no longer loved me and that he wished we weren't related and that I shouldn't try to be around him or play with him anymore. I was 8 at the time, and this crushed me. Story 33. This girl was oversharing her life with me and told me that her dad abused her when she was younger, and now she regularly hooks up with her brother. And she wasn't complaining. She said it as it was the most normal thing. Story 34. When I met my ex-MIL for the first time, she told me, over coffee, that her pills have to be locked up because she tried to kill herself by taking a bunch of them one time. Story 35. A few weeks ago, my sister and I met a guy. Went out with him as friends. He knew we both are dating someone else. Third time we met him, he said absolutely casual that if we want to have with him, he does not see a reason to meet or talk to us ever again. Like, no need to talk to women if they want to have with him. I was too shocked to slap him. Story 36. In high school, I had a boyfriend from a different school who was a pathological liar. Some lies were more obvious than others. The best was when we were talking on the phone, and he casually told me that the other day in shop class a car fell on his hand. The other students knew to put air in his hand, and when he got to the hospital, they gave him a robotic arm. He went into detail about it too, like they put microchips in his brain and put a computer mouse in his hand, and the microchips were too strong, so he crushed the mouse, so they had to adjust it. I was just kind of like, huh? He then told me that the doctors offered to make his entire body robotic, mind you. This was like 1999 since insurance covered it, which meant he wouldn't age, but he declined because he wanted to grow old with me. We had been dating for about 2 weeks. Story 37. Several years ago, my grandma casually admitted in the middle of a meal at Red Lobster that she smoked the whole time she was pregnant with my mom, El Mayo. It was embarrassing, obviously, but kind of funny too. Story 38. A cashier at Target told me her bestie was uninvited to her wedding for calling CPS on her, for leaving a gun out where a toddler might get it. But it's okay because there weren't bullets in it. Story 39. I have a tattoo, and a girl saw it and asked me, "Oh, who'd you get it with?" And I said some guy, I don't remember his name. I know the address of the studio, though, if you want to check it out. And she was confused by my reply, and I was confused by her confusion. And she said, "You forgot his name." And I was just like, yeah. And after some back and forth, I figured she assumed it was a couple's tattoo and was asking the name of whatever guy I must have gotten along with. And who jumps to assume it's a couple's tattoo? I said, no one has ever asked me that. Who would assume it's a couple's tattoo? And she replied, who would ask for the name of the artist. Story 40. During my C-section, the OB said, You have a beautiful uterus. That's like one of the few things I remember from that procedure, plus meeting my little one. Story 41 during the pandemic. I worked in one of those coffee shops some larger grocery stores have inside them. There was an older guy who worked in the meat department that would come by every day, a bit rugged and didn't usually talk much, but nice enough. Then one day we were talking about COVID, and he casually told me, in complete seriousness, the disease was manufactured in a Chinese lab to drop the world population below 500,000 to make it easier to institute the New World Order, and it's all written in the Georgia Guidestones. I have never made a vanilla latte faster. Story 42. I worked at a gas station convenience store for a year when I was in my early 20s. One day this guy comes in, couldn't have been older than maybe 18, 19, and he comes in grinning and standing there. I welcome him and ask if he needs help, what pump he's on, etc. He goes on a laugh and pull change out of his pocket. He starts talking about how people are so funny with their money, that coins and dollars are meaningless, and he has no use for it. We get weirdos often, so I just kind of smile and nod, and he goes on a disjointed spiel about humans and how Satan has no use for these worldly things, and how interesting people are, and how meaningless the things we do are. He eventually left without buying anything. It gave me a laugh, and I definitely didn't forget it. He smiled the entire time. Story 43. I was working in a high-security area of a prison as a correctional officer at the time. An inmate had caught a rat, skinned it, and tied up its skin in his cell like you would see a tanner do with a hide. He offered to give it to my coworker, who was working the cell block with me, and told him, "Here, you could show your dad. He'll be proud of you." Completely serious and straight-faced. Story 44 not told to me, but my sister's friend had a neighbor that casually told her she just leaves her 4-month-old baby at home when she needs to walk to the store. WTF. Story 45. Concussions aren't as bad as they say. They are ex-35-years-old boxer. I've had plenty of concussions. 2 sentences later, he tells me he can't remember things as well as he used to. Story 46. I was talking to my friend Molly in 4th grade, and I asked her why she was still wearing flip-flops now that it was cold, and she told me those were her only shoes. I was horrified. She also had no coat, and we lived in WNC where it got cold. This was early 70s when nobody seemed to notice or care about these kids. I gave her my coat, and my mom didn't get mad. She just told me that was nice and got me a new coat. Ever since then, I can't enjoy having nice things when people around me don't. So I try to share as much as possible, because it's not right that some have to suffer with nothing. And I taught my daughter and now my grandkids that if every single person did one kind thing every day, the world would be an immensely better place. Story 47. 2015 or so. White-collar office work. Guy who's talking about his appreciation for the country of Germany drops the sad thing about Ruth Bader Ginsburg is that the Germans missed her family. Story 48. My boss told me that she was going to send the bill for her pregnancy test to her new boyfriend because she had a pregnancy scare and then after found out had a vasectomy and hadn't told her. We were not friends. She was my boss. She also brought into the office a mystery tube of cream that she found in his medicine cabinet to ask us what we thought it was. Respect level finally reached 0 after that one. Story 49. Dude, I have so many from this, but I took my psycho ex-roommate through a Chick-fil-A drive-thru one day. The people standing outside to take orders from the cars were doing their thing. As we were waiting, by the time I got up to order, she basically had me order for her, which I don't mind doing, and so I did. The lady taking our order was absolutely hilarious, and she was holding up the thing for me to put my card into pay, and I kept missing the insert slot, and on my 4th or something failed attempt, I decided, I was like, man, I can't get it in. ID is a dude, and she absolutely died laughing. From there, it was me and this lovely woman laughing hysterically at what just came out of my mouth, followed by finishing the order and a genuine have a great day. I went up to the window and collected our food and was still chuckling to myself about that experience. And I turned to my roommate and asked her if she had heard any of that because it was so funny. She barely glanced in my direction and kept texting like she had been doing the entire time and just said the most astounding words I've ever heard strung together from another human before. She went, "Sorry, no, I don't pay attention to people that I don't think are attractive or that I wouldn't want to. You not that," is what she said to me. Rarely am I ever speechless. I didn't say a word as I drove her home, and then I made up some excuse to just drop her off and leave to go somewhere else. So I didn't have to be around her. I needed to at least just sit with what the eye just heard. It was insane. I mean, that was just insane. Such disrespect, and for a complete stranger to whom he didn't even look their way once. By the way, the Chick-fil-A employee was gorgeous. I'm a straight woman, but I ain't blind, and my roommate's idols were literal stars, so I'm very glad I moved out when I did cause things got so bad, and I have plenty of other stories about her. Some insane things she said. I actually have recorded BC. I started doing that when I figured I'd need evidence to break my lease eventually. Story 50, I started work and opening restaurant about a month ago, and this girl I was polite to absolutely clung on to me for some reason and followed me around during that first day. Proceeded to tell me her husband kicked her and their 4 kids out to cheat on her with a minor last year. They're back together now, but she also openly admitted she now physically abuses him in front of their kids. I was pretty put off. This is a little unrelated to the question, but the day we got our uniforms and we had to try the shirt on over the shirt we were wearing, and I had ordered the wrong size. She grabbed a fistful of my arm fat and asked me if that was why my shirt didn't fit me. Luckily, she couldn't handle the job after 5 weeks and stopped showing up. Story 51, not the weirdest thing, but definitely shocking. My ex-best friend's GF and I were at a barbecue, and we discussed a recent event where an off-duty police officer publicly beat his girlfriend in a restaurant. She said, ever so casually I would be able to take body shots. It's just the head shots that really hurt. Story 52, I've drunk about 13 Monster Energy drinks and 2 5-hours one time, was shaking like crazy and my heart rate dropped. One of my younger coworkers shared to me about her addiction to Monster. She vents to me sometimes when we were working on the same shift. We aren't very close, but I feel inclined to listen because I think she has a rough upbringing and few emotional supports in her life. It's also kind of why I'm more attentive of her over my other coworkers. Story 53, when my oldest child was about 4 months old, he did not have a bowel movement for 3 days. We called the pediatrician's office, and the nurse told us not to worry for a few more days. She then said that his digestive system was still developing and that eventually he'll settle down to once a week like the rest of us. I told her that we're vegetarians, so we're more like once a day or even more often kind of people. She said it must be nice to be that regular. Yes, it is, I guess. Story 54, genuine conversation with someone I bumped into at a pub-based event that hadn't seen for 15 years since school. We weren't even friends, just classmates. I'm paraphrasing, but I am not exaggerating about how fast he dropped this honker into the conversation. Liam, right? It's Roy from school. Oh, yeah. All right, you're not too bad, thanks. How have you been? Oh, pretty. Work's been hard in. I got put away for a bit. Wait, what? A sad pain expression. I got done for domestic violence. Continues to look at me as if he's not completely to blame. Story 55 years ago, I worked in a record store. A customer comes in asking if we have sheet music. I told him we had a small section, and he said he was looking for sheet music of gospel music for harmonica. I told him we only had sheet music for guitar and piano. He got really angry and went on some tirade that ended telling me I was bigoted against harmonica players. Story 56, he said everyone was a zombie. Just a few days ago, he died and came back to life, and everyone around him was dead. So he brought them back to life, but the people kept dying, and he kept reviving them. Then no people were on the roads. All the cars were driving themselves. People are just a figment of his imagination and don't exist until he creates them. If zombies are real, then he can start killing them. Told to me by a hitchhiker I picked up the other day. Yeah, I know, I won't be doing that again. There was another guy at the pharmacy who was close to 80 years old. He asked if I was single and said how difficult it is to mint ladies nowadays. Then shared in detail about his surgery. I think he had to have surgery twice, maybe for hemorrhoids or something. That's why he was there buying adult overnight briefs. Story 57, while talking with my mom on the line at a casino about my brother's recent death, a random woman walked up to us crying. She told us through tears that she knew exactly what we were going through because her goldfish passed away 3 years ago. She then proceeded to show us her engraved locket with a pic of said goldfish and date of death. Story 58, I remember back in high school this weirdo who had a crush on me walked up to me after school one day, recited my address to me from memory, described the outside of my house and the cars my parents drove. Yeah, that's not weird and creepy at all, dude. Story 59, I made muffins for breakfast one morning, and when I was putting butter on one of them, I got some crumbs in the butter. My mom, who was also getting a muffin, just looked at me and said my stepdad used to beat me when I'd leave crumbs in the butter and then just want to watch TV. Like, girl, is that a threat? Story 60, I found my mom dead this morning, but I didn't know what to do, so I just came to school. She then continued to do the crossword puzzle the class was working on. She wasn't lying. It still breaks my heart. Story 61 had to get picked up by a friend last minute. Cause mom, couldn't I hope your mom's okay? Yes, she's fine. She thinks her appendix might have bursted. Story 62, I know I don't know you that well, but do I have chicken legs? My sister made me feel super self-conscious about them before coming into work today. Story 63, I was getting my hair done this last weekend by my daughter at her cosmetology school. One of her fellow students was excited to meet me. She talked nonstop and eventually told me that she has hemorrhoids and that she has her husband push them back in. So much TMI from a stranger. Story 64 had a guy ask for books on how aliens built the pyramids. I had to explain why we don't have books specifically on that subject. He explicitly did not want my suggestions of books on how they were actually built. He casually claimed it was leftist, Jewish, anti-slavery propaganda. Don't you know? I finally just put him on a computer to look it up himself. He had to ask what a browser was. Story 65, literally. Right after a one-night stand with Tinder date, we were still in the process of unhooking our body parts. She said now is the time I remove my mask and reveal to you my true praying mantis self. We'd only known each other about 2 hours and I just got real cold. I still have nightmares about her. Edit clarification. Story 66, ISN, amazing how the sun turns into the moon at night. Pointing at my Adam's apple, every time you drink something it moves. This was from an 18-year-old guy that has one too. It wasn't an icebreaker or conversation starter. He just brought it up without a follow-up statement when I said, yeah, it does. Story 67, I was sitting quietly by myself on a bench outside of my community college. Waiting for the friend I carpooled with to get out of class. This dude who looks like a ferret comes and sits next to me and starts telling me how he has a serious anger issue and was almost expelled in high school because someone lied and claimed he said he was going to bring a gun to school and how he hated that person anyway. So he never would have talked to them about anything in the first place, and how this got him kicked out of wrestling, which was like the only way he had to let out the anger. The really fun part was apparently we shared a class, which I learned when he got my phone number off a class info sheet. Story 68, am guilty of this one. Maya Mael was talking about how she had no idea how my niece and her boyfriend managed to pay theater bills since neither of them work. I answered with most hetero at that time. It was still heroin addicts become middlemen to earn money. It's pretty easy for white middle-class early 20-year-old in a rich town to sell weed and pills to make money to pay the bills and stay high. Dead silence. Oops. Story 69. I could make an entire list from this one person, but because it says weirdest, I will go with this one. Started dating a guy, and a few months in, he really leaned into the werewolf thing. I thought it was just weird bedroom roleplay like growling during, but he insisted that he was a werewolf to the point that we would argue about it. I tried stuff like, how come you don't wake me up when you leave the house to hunt at night? I'm very stealthy. What about if I put up a camera? I would see you leaving. I'm too fast for a camera to pick me up. Well, you have to sleep at some point, right? How can you if you're out hunting all night? Werewolves need much less sleep than humans. I eventually just started ignoring him when he mentioned werewolf things, and he eventually stopped talking about it. A couple years into the relationship, I asked him if he remembered the whole werewolf thing. Thinking we could both laugh at it now that it was in the past, he played dumb like it never happened. Story 70, I don't believe in the moon. Room went silent. I don't believe in outer space. The earth is all there. This was a real conversation with a real person in, get this, the teacher's lounge. It was a woman who was in training to be a teacher. She subs in our building. I've never been able to look at her again without shaking my head. Story 71, oh, ID repressed it until just now, my worst first date ever. She sent me GPS coordinates of where to meet her. She asked if I wanted to see the throwing axes she kept in the trunk of her car. She was on the phone with her husband the whole time, walking him through how to make dinner without her. She was 10 years older and 50 pounds heavier than her pictures, because she had had 3 surrogate pregnancies from money illegal where I live, and had terminated one on purpose, because she didn't think the biomom would be a good mother. I have never noped out so hard or so fast in my life. Story 72, they left bodies at the incinerator in Detroit during the 1967 riots. An old drunk Italian guy I went to install carpet for when I was a kid. No one on my crew believed he told me and pressured me to not say anything else about the customer. Story 73, walking through downtown KC with my friend back to his apartment, and this dude walks up to us. He waves his arm like a wizard casting a spell and just says Magic the Gathering. We were floored. We wanted to know more. Story 74, my former boss, owner of a restaurant. I live in Brazil, said that he had to rape his wife because she didn't want to get pregnant. I had to make her drink a lot of wine. When she passed out, I took advantage, and now we have the prettiest girl in the world.